I'm not sure if this is the right form, but I want to ask it anyway. I wanted to know, my concern is for all the churches I'm concerned. Can anyone tell me how old you have to be to vote in a business meeting in the Seventh-day Adventist Church? And I'm told that there's nothing in the bylaws and nothing in any of the other books. We couldn't find anything. But I don't understand how a 7-year-old, is because they're baptized members, can vote in a business meeting when they're not business minded. So can anyone, and I want information. I don't want somebody to tell me off the top of your head. I want paperwork. I want to see it. And if it's not there, I want to know how do I get it to the top so we can have it in where they can vote it in or out or whatever they do.
Okay, good question. I thought you were talking about the ones that are in the evening or they're live, so that's where my head was at. I said, wow, 80, 90, I don't know. But you're talking about young ones.
Yes.
The church manual is really the one that drives the process of the board and the business meetings. And there is no age stipulation. What there is the fact that you have to be a member. So based on the way it reads, legally, a 7-year-old, if they're a member, they can vote. Now, one would question, the maturity of a 7-year-old. Now, we know that there are some 7-year-olds that are very mature. And so, should we preclude them from being able to take Bible studies and make a profession of faith and get baptized at that age? I don't think we should keep them from doing that. But legally, by the current way, yes, they do have a vote. Now, the second question was, if there is no such stipulation, how can we get this through the system to change it? You actually have to change it. There is a way, but you have to change the church manual. The only way to change the church manual is to have the general conference in session make that change, which is done. Now, how is it done? It begins with the local church. The local church would bring it to, as a board, as a business meeting action, that you would like for the denomination to make a research as to the wisdom on age-appropriate voting in a church, local church business meeting. What that will do, you would then send that to the conference office. The conference office will then take a look at it and review it in the executive committee. The executive committee, if it's so voted and they see wisdom in pursuing this, they will then take it to the union executive committee. If the union sees fit to go to continue, they will take it to the North American Division executive committee. And if it passes the North American Division executive committee, it will make it to the church manual committee of the general conference, which will then be convened for voting on the next general conference session, which will be in, they met last year, so it'll be 5 years. Actually, it'll be 4 years from now. So that's the process.
Okay, you did answer. You did. I knew that process of how to get it to all the way up to the top.
Okay.
But what I'm saying, and I'm not saying that a 7-year-old is not astute enough to be able to be baptized, because that's up to God and their mindset, how their heart is going. I am saying in a business meeting, in a church business meeting where we adults conduct business meetings, financial, speaking on people, all kinds of stuff that goes on in a business meeting. I just don't understand how a 7-year-old would be able to grasp that. Now, with that said, you said that there has been some 7-year-olds that were, astute enough to be able to do that. You have to take me there. I've been to a chess tournament where I saw an age 5-year-old girl beat a 18-year-old girl, so I know that the mindset is there. But that's chess. And we talking about church, we're talking about
maturity
of
to do business.
Yes, so it doesn't seem feasible to me, so I just want to, and I understand it is not in the church manual. We did our research, we looked, and it's not there. but it needs to be there.
Yeah, now,
So
sister,
that's where I wanna go.
and I don't mean to be argumentative, and I'm not, so please, I don't take it as that. In my own experience, I can tell you that there are some 25, 35, 55-year-old people who I would question if they have the maturity to actually vote in a business meeting.
I second that motion.
So,
Right there in our church, I understand that.
so, you know, I wish we had that the Lord had a USB plug in us where it would register in some kind of a graph if you plug it in to show the maturity level before we let you in to vote.
Right.
But the problem is that we didn't come with that. And so if we are to discriminate, and this is now becomes very sensitive, if you begin to discriminate by age, then now you can begin to parse and discriminate about those who we think are mature and those who we think that are not mature enough, and all of a sudden you will begin to see adults now being kept because the collective general thinking will say that that person does not have. And then you start getting into even more sensitive areas where you have people who have learning disabilities. And so, in reality, should we keep a mentally disabled individual from getting baptized? The answer is no. But legally, they have the right to vote, even though you know they don't have the capacity to be able to deal with the business, the idiosyncrasies of these things. So what you're touching on is extremely sensitive. And then you get into other areas of ethnicity, people from other countries that may not have a good handle on the English language. And so now someone else is saying, you don't understand well enough to be able to have the maturity, or at least the wherewithal, not the maturity, but the language understanding to be able to vote on that one item. So I'll tell you, it gets complex, but there is a process, and you have every right as a member to affect the change of the church manual by following that process. But it's not as simple. And when they get into these committees at that level, they begin to look at these things, you know, mental disabilities, learning, language. What is important to a person in South America may not be as important to a person from Canada. And so you have all these differences and sensitivities and things. That's why it's so beautiful when we come together as a body, where we have the freedom to speak, the freedom to discern and to listen and to hear, and then by vote, give what you think is right. And I believe that when we invoke the presence of the Holy Spirit, when we say, Lord, lead and guide, the rocks will speak.
I appreciate that because I never thought about it on all that level. It was just only on the little kids.
And maybe that's why it's not there. It's because it does get
That
complicated.
does not say that I'm not going up the ladder. I'm just telling you, I never thought about it like that.
Well, praise the Lord. That's why we're here and we're reasoning together. There was another hand over there. Yeah, there we go.
Early on, it was alluded that the Kids in Discipleship program was being used to boost or infuse the enrollment in our schools.
It would have a resulting effect. It's not really for that, but it would have a resulting effect if you are mentoring and training the parents early on from the very beginning.
When do you foresee or forecast this happening?
It's already started. And
in terms of the actual enrollment starting to
okay.
take place.
That's why it's a 10-year program. I think in order to shift this downtrend, which has been going now, and it's not just in our conference, this is a problem in the entire North American division, where the enrollment numbers continue to go down and parents think that public education is really an option. So what has happened? Well, the values have shifted over the years. There were people years ago, you know, let's say 30, 40, 50 years ago, that were willing to sell their home, their property, in order to keep their kids through school. Today, you're not willing to give up your car. You don't want to drive a VW or a Pinto. Do they still make Pintos? I'm dating myself. You'd rather have your Lexus, or you'd rather have your Mercedes-Benz or your Cadillac, you see, and sacrifice your child. Is what we value. The value system has changed. So what we're hoping is to begin to now help our families and our parents to shift those values and to put their children and their eternal lives as priority.
Mr.
Does that answer your question?
Well, they're kind of, like you said, that 10 years is a long program of schools are dying. I don't think there's enough time.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, we've been talking about this now for several years, how to effect change. And we thought that we could do this, begin to turn this thing around over 1 year. But the more we looked at it, the more we're talking about changing a culture. And in order to change the culture, you've got to start somewhere, but the effects is going to be probably, we're saying maybe 10 years. That's why it's a 10-year initiative. We're saying we're committed to start, but if you don't ever start, you'll never get there. And so it's not an easy thing.
Mr. President, just wanting to acknowledge too that today we have our Vice President for Education, Dr.
Yes.
David Gillum. And although he did not have a presentation, if there's a question or comment that
Thank
you'd like
you.
to share pertaining to Adventist education, he is available to respond.
Thank you. If you have something to add, Dr. Gillum, I'd be happy to have you share.
That question, that observation is very near and dear to our hearts as well. Growing up in Adventist education, both of my parents were teachers. My 4 children have been all the way through Adventist education. I can tell you that a lot of us are resonating with those questions, and there's a lot of talk being generated about how to change this trend. In fact, just last year, the president, myself, several leaders and principals and so on in our conference went to La Sierra University for a national summit, think tank on Adventist education. A lot of ideas were presented, everything from sending more tithe back down to our level to just all kinds of ways to value our children and to change the culture of our church. So I can tell you there's a lot of energy going into this, and we need everybody here to continue that dialogue with us. Let's all pledge to each other not to let that dialogue just fade out. Let's keep the dialogue going. And we're trusting in God to give us the answers.
We are encouraging also our pastors to be very supportive of the local school and to be active in making sure that they don't stop until they see every child having an opportunity to go to our Adventist schools.